For those that are not familiar with this platform, you can look in your panel control. There is a little window that shows chat. So if you have any questions during the presentation, we will take care of that at the end. We will have a session of questions and answers at the end. So you all please refer to the chat box if you have any question for any of us.
Or suggestions for, or tell us about what you've done in similar vein. That's to what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, I think it's 4 p.m. Time is precious. We have 30 minutes to run this presentation. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on today's Educator webinar, Tools and Tips for Funding Technology Summer Camps. I'm Danielle Orozco-Cole. I'm the CTE Program Manager for FLATE and their Florida Makes. And like I mentioned before, just a little housekeeping before we get started. Remember to type in the chat box if you have any question or suggestions. And also the recordings of this presentation are going to be available for you in our website. For today's presentation, we're going to start with introductions. We will include available resources for this topic, funding options, which is the main topic, and I'm pretty sure you're looking forward for this, and the tool and tips for a fun summer camp free of charge. That's the idea. And lastly, the questions and answer session. Like I mentioned earlier, my name is Danielle Orozco-Cole, and I'm the CTE Program Manager with the Florida Advanced Technological Education Center, now under Florida Makes umbrella. And it's my pleasure to introduce the Director of FLATE, Dr. Marilyn Barger.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's great for you to have you all with us today. We have been funded by the National Science Foundation, and now as part of the Florida Makes Network, we are partially funded by the Department of Education and the State Department of Education, that is, under their Perkins State Leadership grants. So we thank them for participating and supporting us and to continue the work we were doing in the past 15 years with the National Science Foundation funding. All right, next. So our vision is still to drive the Florida's world-class manufacturing workforce education to really make sure we're meeting industry needs with the programs that we have that support manufacturing across the state at all education levels, like K-12 and the post-secondary. Okay, next. And we typically do our work or package our work in three areas: in curriculum reform and development, working closely with the programs across the state and the Department of Education together, and of course, the most important, the employers who are going to hire our graduates. Another bucket that we work in, I'll say, to support great manufacturing programs is to make sure the educators are well educated themselves in new technologies, if they're educational or technical technologies, whatever is needed, be sure that students are learning what industry needs. And then lastly, we need to recruit. To have a strong program, we got to have lots of students. So we do a lot of outreach and work on student recruitment with in all kinds of venues and depending on the locations around the state. All right, next.
Well, thank you very much for those of you that are not aware about what we do. And now it is my pleasure to introduce today's guest speaker, Mr. A. Randery. He is the Florida State University Associate Dean for the College of Communication and Information in Tallahassee, Florida. Abe's experience includes promoting and connecting K-12 with STEAM educational opportunities. Also has a vast experience coordinating and executing STEAM camps for more than 50 years at the college and K-12 level. Eve is a board member also with FLATE, which stands for the Florida Association for Industrial Technical Educators, which I encourage you all to please go and check the website. It's flate.us. Wonderful resources for all of you. And he's also the Technology Students Association board member. And Eb, as Associate Dean, teaches courses in leadership, technology, and health IT. So now, without further ado, I will turn the time to Eb, our guest speaker. Eb, please.
Okay, well, welcome and thank you, Marilyn and Daniele. Thank you for giving me some time to talk today. I hope everybody can hear me well. If not, just yell and I'll fix something on my side. Thanks, awesome. So before we get started, I wanted to do a quick poll, and I think Amanda's gonna pop this up. So has anybody hosted a virtual camp in the past?
We're gonna allow a few seconds more. So go ahead, Amanda. Oh, wow, great.
Wow.
Great answer.
That's
Yeah.
a pretty good number.
Yes.
That's awesome, cool. Okay, well, thank you for that. And can we switch on to the next slide, Daniele? Okay. So just a little bit about, stuff I've been doing. I'm not new to this. Danielle said I've worked with FLATE. I'm on the board for Florida Technology Students Association for probably 15 years. I've been involved in NSF projects, Digital Harmony, which was a project to give computers to incoming sixth graders in a middle school so that everybody had a computer in 3 years. There was a 5-year project with the Board of Governors where we were looking at promoting STEM programs to engineering, computer science, and IT programs to high schools across the Panhandle. And I've done some work with FACTI and other kinds of things along the way, and I'll use some of that in what I'm talking about today. So next slide, please. Awesome. So one of the things we've done in the past, and I do this every time I work with teachers, is we usually have like a listening panel, like kind of what do you think? Like what are some of the challenges, right? And what do you need? So when I talk to teachers, a lot of them talk about these kinds of things, right? They need more training. The technology, as we know, keeps advancing. If you're going to teach a summer camp, this coming summer, and you're going to do it on HTML and CSS, I mean, students are kind of like, okay, I did that in middle school. Why are you wasting my time? They're bored. So how do you teach the latest and greatest technology or the things that are interesting if you don't have the time to be trained yourself? So that's one of the things we always hear from teachers. And you can see this list. A lot of it is really challenges that they face along the way in how they share resources. I think one on this list was really kind of cool. The last one, it would be really awesome if I knew what every teacher in my county was doing and every teacher in the next county was doing and the county after that, so that I could have somebody I could call. If I'm working on a camp for robotics and I'm having some difficulty, can I call Daniele and say, hey, you just doing the same thing, or you're teaching this, can we talk and figure out a plan to get better at what we're doing? So switch on to the next slide. And then, there are some training available. There's, in-service days, I guess it does work sometimes. FETC is always a big conference in Orlando that has a lot of different options for people to learn. FACTI actually has, if you've seen FACTI's website, they have some online training going on right now that's available. And then they do online virtual training throughout the year. And then all of the different groups within FACTI actually have training. So FATE has some different options and some of the others. So DOE has some resources. CPOMS is a website that has some things. Obviously, professional conferences are where we can learn. And I think even things like VEX and TSA and Skills USA also have options for people to learn different tools that help them get up to speed on different things. And I also want to stress ed camps. I mean, obviously with COVID, we haven't had a lot of ed camps lately, but ed camps are a great way for building community. It's something I love going to around the state and interacting with teachers, and it's teachers teaching other teachers in a very informal way. There's a website, if you go to ed camps, that tells you all the different options. And that's one way where you can identify other teachers in your county usually who are doing interesting things that you can partner with. And then I put a follow and link and you have the slides, and it goes to some online chats on Twitter using those hashtags like ISTE or Florida Ed Chat that basically connects you with teachers doing interesting things, but teachers I feel that are having challenges that you can learn from. So I'm a big proponent of teachers teaching each other and figuring out these problems and staying away from administration and all those other people that mess up lives. Thanks. I'm going to focus on a couple different things in here, right? And you know, if you join this webinar and you thought, wow, I'm going to go in here, there's going to be a link, I click it and I'm going to get money. Well, it's not that easy. It never is. I talk about boundary spanning because really you have to be that role, that boundary spanner. You got to kind of do your day-to-day job, but you got to figure out what's going on in the community and then pay attention to what's going on in the community. So if the governor goes on TV today and says, wow, we're going to be doing this new program for career and tech ed, as a boundary spanner, your immediate radar goes up and says, that's something I'm interested in. How does that impact me? And what can I do to play along? So it's really important, no matter which category we're talking about today, is to look at what's going out in the community and then use that as a way of bringing it into what you need to either run your camp or to build your resources within your school. Next slide. So when I talk about companies, right? So whether it's national employers, large foundations, you know, if I'm in the Tampa area, here's a good example. Citibank has tons of programs because they deal with finance and banking that help schools build cybersecurity efforts. So if I want to do a cybersecurity camp, I know that Citibank is always looking for employees in cybersecurity. I'm going to partner with Citibank, and they actually do this in Oldsmar, in the area in Oldsmar with Eastlake High School and a couple others, where they basically fund programs in the schools so that it gives them access to employees, but it also allows them to share their resources and feel like they're doing some good. But at the end, we're getting our money and our resources to build our camps. Staying in that area, Nielsen is another company down in Tampa that does these efforts. ReliaQuest does cybersecurity training. So it's a matter of like looking at these national companies and saying, what are they doing? Every one of these companies, if they're Fortune 500, they have the corporate head, GM, IBM, Microsoft, and then they have a foundation. And the foundation is really what funds a lot of programs. And you've got to go into those foundations and see what they're funding. And that is easy money that they're giving to you. You just have to be able to apply and meet their deadlines. I've gotten a couple of grants through State Farm. I mean, like State Farm does insurance. Why are they funding IT programs and cyber programs? But you know, they're just giving you money if you ask for it. So foundations, great resources, especially if they're in STEM. So I mentioned Microsoft, but if it's Cisco, if it's IBM, if it's any of the STEM related companies, their foundations are more likely to fund summer programs or to fund efforts or to fund partnerships long term. So definitely boundary spanning to do that. Local companies are good because they're in your neighborhood. Their parents are probably parents of your students or something. So how do I build relationships with those local companies? I'm a big scanner, boundary spanner of the newspaper. Oh, this company got a grant. This company produced a news product. This company was on a list of best places to work. Excellent. Who do I talk to in that company? And how do I build a relationship with that company so that I can basically go forward and do what I'm doing? And then I mentioned parents again. You have amazing students in your class. Where do their parents work? What do they do? And how do I build those relationships? Because every institution has a foundation, has a fund, has some sort of scholarship program. I mean, I cannot tell you how many people get foundation scholarship programs from Publix because they have this amazing foundation and they get their college paid for free. But their parent or somebody they know works in Publix, and then they consider it free money, but it's an allocation they're setting aside. So if I want to run a summer camp, I can go raise the money myself, or I can partner with one of these institutions. So I'm thinking a little bit long term. I'm thinking about relationships. I'm thinking about boundary spanning, which I'll mention again, and I'm learning what's happening in my community, and I'm figuring out how to then help build my program. The more people help me, the bigger and better my program becomes, and the easier it is for me to do the stuff. Next slide. So when I talk about building relationships, right, I talked about companies, but a lot of the companies will also offer training grants. If they've got a new thing coming out, nobody's going to use it unless they get people engaged with it. So how do I get in on the next version of that server, or the next version of the software, or the next version of this tool? Is I'll partner with those companies, and then they will provide training grants for me. So I might get educated, and then I can use some of their things in the summer, right? If a company comes to you to try to sell IT to you or sell some product, I mean, ask them, what kind of training grants do you have for me as an instructor learning it? Also, we'd be happy to talk, but what kind of options do you have for us? That one program I mentioned, which was the program in the school, Digital Harmony, where we gave computers to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, that was a contract that HP was signing with the city. And as part of it, they had to do some good, and they donated all that equipment as part of that thing. It's just a matter of what's happening and how do I play in that environment. And then they gave all those computers for 3 years, right? Because they wanted the contract. So when I talk about training grants, things like that, if a company's trying to sell a product, usually to a county or something like that, they need to, show other incentives, figure out what those are. And then I mentioned the big ones, Adobe, CDW, Cisco, Certiport. They all have programs for training. They're all trying to get the latest and greatest pieces of their software within your schools. Great. What are you going to do for me as a teacher? How are you going to fund this camp? I want to fund this camp on your beautiful stuff you're trying to sell. Why don't we do this as a demo with your funding, and then we'll see if it works, and then we can show that to the school district. So then you partner in that way to do that. The big ones are, everybody chases Microsoft, some of the others, but I mentioned State Farm, but there's others. GM, you might not think of GM having a tech funding program, but they do, right? So how do I go after that? Ford has one too. I mean, it's amazing the resources these companies have that can give. And I know you've got the PDF of this, but there's other links in here that you can go look at to see what kind of funding options and training options are out there. Next slide. So I'm talking about yes, sports workshops. Thank you, Marilyn, for that. These big companies have tons of these foundations that do some very interesting things. All right, so we know on the national level over the last couple of years, there's been a real push from, who needs college? Let's all do technical training. Whether you agree with that or not, I don't really care. But I look at the money, right? They've spent a lot of money the last couple of years pushing CTE funding to states, $1.2 billion coming, nationally. So where's that money going, right? Start asking the questions. Is it going to like some superintendent somewhere? Is it going to DOE and they're stashing the money? I mean, where's the money going? How is that money flowing to the schools? How is it flowing to the counties? And it involves paying attention in the boundary spanning role and figuring out where that money is going. And then asking questions like, how do we get a piece of that? How does our school district get a piece of that money? Talking to, somebody in your county saying, who do we know in Tallahassee who knows where that funding's coming? Because it goes from federal to state and then it sits in Tallahassee until it gets divvied up. I want to be a part of that. So these announcements are great. Perkins funding funds some of the programs for FLATE. Well, what else does Perkins fund? Where does it? Perkins funds FACTI, Perkins funds Florida TSA. What else does it fund? And how do we get some of that for the camps we want to run? So I think you have to keep knocking on doors and building relationships that people see that you're doing that and it works. I know NSF funds some of what FLATE does. A couple of years ago, NSF put a little caveat in all of their grants saying, whatever grant you submit to us, your research has to have an outreach component. You've got to do something in the community with your research. So are you running outreach programs in high schools? Are you running programs in community colleges? Are you sharing the resources in this way? What are you doing? So most researchers that I know, since I work with them, aren't interested in running outreach programs. They're researchers. They want to get in the lab. They want to get to do their research. They don't want to deal with high school kids. They don't want to deal with teachers. That's not their expertise. You need to be able to knock on their door and be like, hey, I'll do it for you, right? And as long as you build good relationships, right? So you can see I'm at Florida State, but I work all across the state. If you're in Tallahassee, every time FSU pushes out a new thing like, hey, we're doing this or we're doing that, go dig and see who's got the funding and what kind of research outreach they have. If it's an NSF funding, they have to have an outreach component, right? So figure out how you can build relationship. And maybe you won't get in on this grant, but you can always knock on a professor's door and say, listen, I know you got this great grant for like $2 million, and I'm sure you're going to build a research stream in this area on, unmanned vehicles, and you're going to be playing with drones. Great. I teach drones in my school and I would love to do something with you in the future. The next time that person writes a grant, they're going to be able to go in and write, okay, well, I have an outreach component where we're going to test some of these things with a group of high school kids next summer, with a group of middle school kids. We're going to run a camp. They don't want to do it. They're just going to give you the money to do it, right? So to me, that is easy money. NSF was amazing for doing this, but most people don't know that there has to be this outreach component. So building relationships with USF, UF, you name your university. If they're getting NSF money, there's a component of outreach. Why am I not getting that money? And why am I not helping that professor spend that money? So, and I'll tell you, most professors don't have the time to do this. So they're happy to cut out a little caveat and say, okay, we're going to give this to this school district and they're going to do this camp for us and they're going to do this outreach. Perfect way to do that. There's some grants through FDLE like this. I found this link I put up here. Like you can, if you're doing a program on culture, there's a $2,500 grant from the DOE. Okay, well, am I finding that? What else does the DOE have money on? There's all these little pockets of money that federal go to state, go sit in some place and then don't always get used. And I think it's knowing that. What about your county commissioner, right? So I'm in Leon County. Our county commissioners, there's a couple of them, but one of them is a lady named Kristen Dozier. We're She's on my phone. I can text her whenever I need her. That's great. You know why? Because if she knows of companies coming into town, if she knows of other partners coming into town, and they want to partner with the school system or partner with the university, I'm right here. Let's talk. It's building relationships, and then she's going to be able to channel them. Especially when those companies come in and they're like, we want all these discounts and lower taxes and all this stuff. We want all these incentives to move our operation here. She can turn around and say, that sounds great. What are you going to do for our schools? What are you going to do for this? And then those companies are like, well, we'll do this program. Okay, well, now we can talk, right? Your department, your economic advisors in your county, the DEO people, Department of Economic Opportunity, what are they doing? Do they know you have programs in your camps? Do they know things? Because if you can do that, that's how you basically fund what you're doing, right? So following that, I put a link on here for AAOP. AAOP is the Army Educational Outreach Program. And that actually has been funding my camp for the last 3 years, and including this summer. It's about $40,000 every summer. Click on this link. It goes. There's programs to do research with high schools. There's programs to do. There's about 17 locations in the U.S. right now that are part of AAOP. And I did 2 years of face-to-face camps with high school kids, 9th and 10th graders. And then we did a virtual one last summer, and we're doing another virtual one this summer, right? And that's ongoing. Every 2 years they'll fund you. You just have to put in an application, right, and partner. So I also bring school teachers in to teach those things for me, right? I'm a college professor. High school scares me sometimes, and you guys teach, high school kids. You know how to connect with them much better. I can do a little bit, but I want teachers in their classroom, right? So I'm paying teachers to come in and teach these students. I'm also paying college kids to act as advisors and tutors. So you can build those relationships, and AOEP has a great program. Let me switch quickly to universities. Lots of universities, they all partner, go visit universities, go, obviously post-COVID, but go visit universities, shake hands, meet people, bring people into your classroom, bring professors in and students to talk about research. That's how you build those relationships. We have 12 universities in the state, 28 community colleges or state colleges. State colleges are huge. They're a good place. Find workshops, partner with them. And then I just mentioned a few student organizations. I'm doing a snippet at Florida State where I am. Every one of these groups here, there are 820 student organizations. Any of the professional ones, they have an outreach mission. They do camps, right? So for example, my students in the community outreach group, COG, are basically working with a local school doing a robotics camp for the next 3 weekends, right? Because it's part of their mission to do that. It's part of how they go into grad school and build their portfolio and build their resumes. So all of these groups, there's a physics group on campus that used to do like Saturday morning physics, but now post-COVID, they go out and do camps in schools. All you have to do is just invite them, right? And if you partner with them and start talking to them, they might find ways to do summer camps. Oh, and their major professor might have an NSF grant that you can partner with to do something. It's all about relationships. Hop onto the next slide for a second. You can fund yourself. I find a ton of things when I'm bored. Sometimes I'll go around Donors Choose and see what's going on and see who in town is looking for projects, and then figure out how I can help them with university resources. Maybe I can't give them money out of the university, but I can send 8 students to help run their camp, right? So I use this Donors Choose as a way of seeing what local teachers are doing and figure out how we can help them do that. Or maybe I can bring their students into our lab to do that. And we've done that a couple times with some students learning Adobe software at a school where we said, hey, I know you guys want to do this, but listen, we've got all these computers that are free on the weekends. If you want to come in and run it in our building, we'd be happy to let you do that, right? And I'll even give you college kids to help mentor them and guide them. We can do those partnerships, but it's building those relationships, those teachers. Whatever you do, Donors Choose or GoFundMe, you still have to figure out the marketing component and reaching teachers. I mean, reaching people who can fund you, and that's the challenge for a lot of teachers. We don't get trained in marketing. There's a Get Ed Funding is an aggregator for different kinds of funding resources. PTOs, talk to them, hey, tell them what you're trying to do. Let them go figure out how to get you the money. Next slide. Okay, I mentioned AOP. There's a lot of different things. I'll talk about this quick story. So I know you guys are from all over the state, but you must have all heard about the BP oil spill, right? Yes, a couple of years ago, destroyed all our beaches, all the fun things. Yeah, when BP got sued, when they settled with the state of Florida, they settled for 1.6 billion. What I just said, 1.6 billion. That money went to the 8 counties that were affected by the oil spill: Escambia, Santa Rosa, Walton, Wakulla. The counties basically from, think of Pensacola all the way through to like St. George Island. Those are the counties that got funded. And those counties have to figure out what to do with the money. Now, the state legislature took the 1.6 billion and said, we'll hold it for you because we're nice people. And they gave what is called the Triumph Board $250 million 3 years ago and said, spend this. When you spend this, we'll give you the next 250 million. Till now, Triumph has spent 100 million of that money, right? And if you go if you go look up Triumph Board, right? It's basically Triumph, myfloridatriumph.com, right? I'll post the link in the chat, but I think if you guys want to push it out, Amanda, somebody, you look at the proposals in that link, right? You'll see it's workforce education, first response, unmanned vehicle systems and excellence, airport project goals. A lot of, if you know anything about the Panhandle, other than Pensacola and Panama City, it's mostly rural. So how are you going to spend $250 million? Wait, how are you going to spend 1.6 billion? You need partners, right? So Triumph is happy if you go knock on their door and say, guess what? In my county, all our teachers are going to get together and we're going to do this, and we're going to get all these kids certified on this thing, or we're going to train on this. Follow the money, build the relationships. It's there. And I'm just using that as an example, but that is a great example of where there's resources, but the people who have to spend it have to justify their spending it. And if you look at that link I sent you, you'll see, there's a lot of resources in there, but there's some like Bate County School Districts is doing Thunderbird Tech program, right? And Walton School District is doing an IT and healthcare certification program. What's stopping your school district, if you're in those counties, from doing a summer camp for the next 5 years to do something, right? Or to do other things. So once again, building relationships, following the resources is a good way. So this is just one example of where it's about looking out there and seeing what's there and then going forward, and building relationships with professors and a whole bunch of other things are a good way, I think, to do that. So I think we're on to the next slide, which is keeping it on time. All right, I think there's another poll too, correct?
Yes, but a little after this one. Thank you very much, Eve. Very, very interesting. I'm pretty sure all our participants are taking notes, but remember, there is a file that you can download. It's a PDF file for you, which is this presentation, and you also will have access to the recordings if you go to our website. On the left is madeinflorida.org. Multiple resources that we have for you to offer for those that are not familiar. We have educators, students, career paths, industry, and at the bottom, resources for engineering technology. But all these are resources to recruit STEM students, and for all of you that are focused on STEM or manufacturing careers. On the right side, we have the FLATE PV Wiki with way more resources for you. You can just go and check a little quick because I want to have time for some of your questions. And in the top on the right, we have a wonderful full video lessons for you to access, that you can have access to many important industries here in Florida. Is divided by sectors, so you just look for your area and you can explore many more. A little quick on the left, top left, many lessons for you to access, help your students. At the bottom left, Manufacturing Day, which is one of our main campaigns for the outreach to recruit students and for you as educators to get familiar with industry and what is the high tech that is available. We have resources to recruit females, which is the WIM and the pink heart. And right there on the right side of the pink heart is where you're going to find this presentation. Link is going to be posted there, and also the recording. So just pay attention, write down. This is a very important resources for all of you. Now, before your questions, I would like to have the poll number 2. Amanda, please, let's get the poll number 2 out there. And let's go get some few seconds for participants. What do you plan to use? Do you plan to use any of the resources shared today? Please select one, yes or no. We're very happy to know your answers. That's a yes.
Yeah, that was a yes from the dog.
Yeah. Okay, a few seconds more because we don't want to take time. We need time for, let's pull out the results, Amanda, a little quick, please. Thank you. Excellent, 91%, excellent. We have time few minutes left for any of you. You have any question or also suggestions. If you are interested in any other specific topic related to the STEM summer camps, please type your comment suggestion in the chat box. You can also email Eve, Madeline, or I. Here is one. Okay, here's Eve's email address, which we have it here for all of you and available in the presentation in the PDF. If there are any questions, please type in the chat. We'll be glad to respond and answer. Well, I guess everybody is very pleased and happy. I'm pretty sure taking a lot of notes from your recommendations. Eve, we would like, on behalf of FLATE and Florida Makes, to thank you for such a wonderful presentation. And thank you all for participating in this webinar. We will be inviting you for future webinars in this interesting topic.